I have watched you in a lot of interviews. Fox, I think you've been on Fox quite a bit. CNN has interviewed you a couple times,
Yep.
have they not?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of talk about the human rights, which I want to hear your views, your thoughts on, but not a lot about who Saeed is as a person. What's he like? What is he like as a father, a dad? What made you fall in love with him? Because you married the guy. There's got to be something.
Yeah. I would say I'm the more technical, or just 1 + 1 is equals 2. The less emotional, which you'd expect.
You're the logic one. You're the what is that? The left.
The logical,
the right brain,
yeah.
left brain,
Just
whatever.
not very emotional. More, I grew up in a family where my dad's a businessman. And he's just
okay.
have a 5-year plan, 10-year plan. Go to just very logical, not very emotional. That's just my personality. And in a relationship, you usually have the woman be that way. But Saeed, he's tough on what he believes in, but actually he's a very sensitive person. He was the one, we'd go to movies and he'd pick the romantic movies. And
Now, is he a guy that cries at movies?
he is.
That's my kind of dude. I like that. All right.
He is. And we'd go to movies and he'd pick the romantic movies. I'd want the action. And the person, when we'd go in and he'd see us, and recognize us, and he would say, "Oh, poor guy, your wife's bringing you to another romantic movie." I'd be like, "No, he's the one bringing me." Like it was the
I wanted
opposite.
to see Born.
Yeah,
That's funny.
it was funny because we'd argue about that. I'd be like, "No, I want to see action. No, let's watch a romantic movie or get a popcorn, sit down." He's very emotional. He would just, he couldn't handle. He'd see like kids being disciplined. He would, he would cry and say, "I know it's biblical, but I just can't physically hit my child." And it came from his background. He when he was a child, he was very pretty much harshly disciplined, I guess. And so
Really
but
rough discipline.
rough discipline, and he went through a lot. And so he was just very sensitive on loud things, or very, if any, anything that had the smallest violence. So and so it's hard knowing he's in an environment where it's crazy. And, recently he used to be in the murder ward of Raja Ishar prison, which he had people, threatening him with knife, taking his food. He was doing horribly. He had lice, and he was doing,
Wow.
and to know the sensitive person he is,
Yeah.
that he's in that kind of an environment really has been the hardest part for me, because his heart breaks over anything, and to know he's seen people executed in front of him, and to know that that's the kind of environment he's in has been hard for me, knowing how sensitive he is to those things. But he was, I guess our family, maybe it's just not typical, but I worked a lot, and for a lot of the younger years of our kids, especially when my son was born, he was a stay-at-home dad.
Oh, cool.
So that's why it's been so hard for my kids, is because he would, get them up, especially nighttime. I'd come from work and I'd be tired. He'd do like their baths, he'd do reading, read the Bible to them, pray with them, worship, and tuck them into bed. And so they were really attached to him, more to him than me, because they almost really didn't see me. They would see me an hour before bed. And so people don't realize a lot of times kids are attached to their moms, because you're there all the time. But
Right.
my kids actually were more attached to their dad.
And he's a sensitive nurturer, it
He
sounds
is.
like, too. So
He
I mean,
is.
he's
And that's the hard part. That's the torture part of the kids, because they were really attached to him. And when they actually took him, my first thought was, wow, more than the beatings or whatever he's going through, his biggest torture is not having his kids around him, and being separated.
How are your kids doing?
It's been rough. That's why, when I decide to do things, sometimes, make crazy decisions with the White House, and going in front of the White House, and I've backed away from that decision. But getting arrested, it's because of them. I'm the only one who sees them suffering every single day. And my thinking is, I don't see Saeed suffering, but in the back of my mind, how soon can I get him home? And how soon can I end this suffering my kids are going through? Because they're suffering. And more than anyone, more than the media, more than people praying, which I'm appreciative of that. But more than anyone, I see the suffering day in and day out.
Right.
And that's hard for me as a mom. I have to just pray and say, okay, God, you're in control. You can take care of their emotions. You can take care of their hurts and issues they're going through. I'm sure a lot of moms and dads out there understand how hard it is when your child is suffering and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't ease it if they're sick or battling with some kind of illness, or emotionally when they're going through stuff, and you just can't do much, and all you have is Jesus, and I just go to him and I say, Lord, you got to take care of the kids, and you got to take care of their emotions, and you have to be their dad. So, but that's been the hardest part of my journey. I see them suffering every day, and I think, okay, I got to do something today. I got to get them out.
How do your kids do with you being gone from time to time?
Because I wouldn't travel if I had to give them to a babysitter every time, because they just, they don't feel comfortable being at someone's, but
you got family.
Because I have my family and they have their grandparents and my sister and sister-in-law and, family, I just feel really comfortable. They love it. They get spoiled. It's harder when I'm home. Rotten. It's harder when I'm home. I'm like, no chocolate right before bed,
But Mom, Grandma, let's...
Oh yeah, one night I was on the phone and it was like an important call about Saeed, and it was like 9 p.m. and they're supposed to be in bed, and as soon as they see me, they're in their beds and they know I'm on the phone. My son got down to convince Grandma that he needed pancakes from scratch. And so I'm like, get off the phone. Here's my mom making pancakes.
Oh, little scammer.
Yeah.
That's awesome, though.
So they get
spoiled.
You're
fighting for Dad, too.
They do. My daughter cried a lot initially when I traveled. First, they were scared, like, why are you traveling? Are you going to be arrested like Daddy? And I had to say, no, I'm not. I'm going to be in the U.S. I'm not going to be in Iran. But I also told them that this is for Daddy. It made it easier. Even when I stay at home longer, like 2 weeks is my longest time that I don't. My daughter's like, so you're home and but does that mean you're not fighting for Daddy? I said, no. So they love me to have me at home, but also they know that me traveling equals to bringing Daddy home. Yeah, bringing home sooner. So.
How are you doing? What are you doing to take care of you, and how are you holding up with all that? That's a lot.
In my perfect world, when they took him in September, I just wanted to be in my bubble and not go anywhere and not be on the news and not travel so much and just have it fixed. And I just felt the Lord pushing me and nudging me, like, no, I want you to go out to media, to the UN, all these places, not because they're going to save Saeed, but it's for my glory, for my kingdom. But it was hard in my nature. I don't like to travel. I don't like being in front of the camera.
Is that more Saeed? Would Saeed be the one that would be more?
Yeah, he was the preacher. He was the pastor. Yeah. He would be more. He'd ask me when he would, teach to come alongside him, and I'd say, no, it's okay. I'll just cook something.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good in the pew. You go and do your thing.
Yeah, I just didn't. He was the one. He didn't mind being in front of the crowd, and but I know as a woman, I think maybe it's the insecurity. When you get in, and especially as big as this case has gone, there's more criticism, and unfortunately there's just from both sides. You hear people saying praying, and then there's the other side where people are criticizing from what you say to what you wear, from how you looked, from he shouldn't have gone there. Just the bigger it gets, you get two sides. I've had threats. I hope he shouldn't have gone back. I hope he rots in that prison, and I've heard.
How do you handle that?
It was hard, and that's why I didn't want to be in the public eye, because I knew with the good, with the prayers and the support comes the bad. And I've had to just learn to take it to Jesus every single time. I'm hurt over my kids, over words people say, over my insecurities. Oh, why did I say that? Why did I do that? And I've had to learn not to take myself too seriously and just let go. And recently I was in California speaking at a church, at a missions event, and I hadn't had my suitcase for 3 days. I was in the same clothes. I didn't have my makeup, and I had the flu, so I was like sweating for 3 days, and cold chills and sweats. But I was like, okay, I'm going to get over myself and I'm going to speak to these missionaries who've come from all over the world. And I've had to really get over myself and be like, I'm here to show the world how amazing Jesus is. And it's not about me. It's not about how I look. It's not about what I say. I might mess up in what I say. It's not about, if Saeed made the right or wrong decision or trying to, defend that. It's all about the gospel. And it's about, for me, it's been getting my husband out and revealing God's glory through this, showing how amazing Jesus is. But every time I fall down, every time I'm disappointed, every time people say hurtful things, I just take it to God, and He really steps in. And
I just can't imagine. I can't imagine ever saying that to someone in your position. I mean, I guess it's just how I'm, but I don't know how I'd handle that.
It's a lot of people who think, it's not my intention, it's a lot of people who think I'm attacking the president, or I'm being, maybe I'm just very, I don't know, just they think there is motive.
Do you think you're hiding the truth, maybe, that like Saeed really was over there?
Well, even when I was in front of the Congress, one of the senators, actually at the Foreign Affairs Committee, one of the people there was saying, what's the agenda? Why are you guys just making this such a big deal? Like it's a Democrat versus Republican agenda. And, some people see it as more of a political agenda, and it's not. And I've said positive things about the president when he has spoken out, and I've criticized him when he hasn't. But it's a human rights issue. I expect, Fox News has covered this multiple times. I think I've been on Fox, I've interviewed with Fox at least 30 sometimes just over the last year.
Yeah.
But CNN has kind of slowly picked it up. But a lot of the liberal media, they should be picking this up. This is not a political issue. This is a human rights issue. Countries, European Parliament, who is 28, 29 countries that are mainly not Christian, have spoken out. They said this is not right. Iran's breaking these human rights laws. And so I expect a lot of our liberal media to be speaking out, which there's been silence. I expect a lot of Muslims that say this is not Islam to be speaking out, because most people say this is not Islam, the violence and this. So I expect a lot of Muslims to be speaking out saying this is not right and putting pressure on Iran, saying this is not Islam. But I've heard there's been much silence from Muslims. There's been much silence from liberal media. And as you mentioned earlier, this is my hometown, Boise area. And I really think that by us becoming more aware of it and bringing more awareness and asking our government officials, we can make a big difference just from Boise, And our senators have done a great job. Our congressmen, some of them have been more vocal, but I've actually asked our mayor or our governor. I know governors have to do with internal issues, not necessarily external issues, but our governor speaking out and being more vocal about it will bring more attention from the president. So that's one thing I've asked. I've asked of our governor. He's been more silent about this, but I've asked that if we speak out, you'd asked, what can we do? How can our government? This might not be a priority. Religious freedom might not be a priority. They're trying to fix the nuclear, but it should be a priority. I believe that when we do the right thing, when we stand up for what's right, everything else falls into place. And so alongside nuclear, religious freedom and Christian persecution and hundreds of thousands of Christians dying and being in prison, not seeing their families, should be one of our top issues. And here's an American citizen, not just any Christian issue. Here's an American citizen being persecuted because he's a Christian. He hasn't broken any law. Iran has admitted when they sentenced him, which we're coming up to the anniversary, January 27th is when they sentenced him to 8 years in prison. When they sentenced him, they agreed. I mean, they confessed that they're holding him illegally. They didn't say he'd broken any law. They didn't say he was a spy from the U.S. None of that. It was Christian. activities. And according to Iran's own law and laws that it has agreed to as being part of the Human Rights Council at the UN, they should allow for that.
Okay, this is something new to me because I'm not a CNN analyst, but you just said that Iran sits on the Human Rights Commission.
Yes, at the UN. And because they have signed laws, they have signed agreements that they would allow for conversions, they would allow for peaceful gatherings of religious minorities, which that's why we've had a lot of outcry from Europe, from Asia, from different parliaments, European Parliament, because Iran, according to their own admission, is holding Saeed illegally.
So what I'm hearing you say is that they're not even being held accountable to the own agreements they've made.
Yeah, exactly.
And Saeed's not the only one in prison there.
No, there's many. There's hundreds of Christians that have been arrested. There's been martyrs, but many Christians, that have long sentences, 10 years, 8 years, 6 years.
Now, when you say martyrdom, I think a lot of times people who are somewhat familiar with the Bible have read stories of martyrs, Stephen the martyr, a famous one, being stoned to death. But you're talking about, I don't know what you consider Iran, kind of almost a quasi-first world country in some ways. I mean, they have a lot of money and technology and all that. But you're talking about a country who's not 150 years behind the times. I mean, they're a modern country who, within their borders, people of faith, Christian faith, have been killed for what they believe. And this is as recent as how recent? Do you have any idea?
I know one of Saeed used to go to a underground Bible school in the 2000s. I want to say, 2000, 2006, there was a fellow Bible school student that Saeed used to attend school with that was killed, and because of his faith. There's been a lot of, in the 90s, but also in the 2000s, in the last 10 years, there's been some, but especially in the 90s, there was huge Brother Haik, Brother Dibaj, those were people who were brutally murdered. Sudman, he was hanged in front of the crowd to scare people off from becoming Christian. And so, there's been a lot of martyrs, a lot of known martyrs and a lot of unknown martyrs, people who've become Christian and have been killed. And so Iran is, our government sitting across the table from the world's #1 violators of human rights issues, including Christian persecution. Of course, Jews and other religions as well, but and we say we care about human rights issues.
How does that make you feel when you see that going on? Because for me, I know how it would make me feel if that was my wife.
Well, they have my husband.
Yeah.
Our government sitting across the table from them. They are the ones breaking the law, and our government doesn't say a thing. That's what has really disappointed me about my government. I've said I felt abandoned. If it was your wife, our president's wife, if your daughters, if it was any of their family, they would be all over. They would say, hand that person over before we even talk. And, if he'd broken a law, okay, he'd go through the legal system and pay the penalty, but he hasn't broken a law. He's there simply because he's a Christian, and the Iranian government does not like Christians. Actually, they try to destroy Christianity in their country and wherever they can. And so it really bothers me. I grew up very gullible, thinking, our government stands up for our rights, and if a country was to break that, violate our rights, they would step in and
jump right in.
They would jump right in, and for so long I heard, well, we don't have a relationship with Iran. We have to go through different channels. But now, over the last few months, we are sitting across the table from them. Why not? If it was your wife or your husband, you would say, I don't even want to talk to you. Hand that person over. And it just really breaks my heart, makes me disappointed in our government when they don't. They're still sitting across the table. They can still do that.
You have had an opportunity from when you and I've chatted and on Facebook, you've posted a lot of things. You've had an opportunity to meet a lot of really influential people. There's a picture you met Donald Trump. Have you even been able to meet the president yet? Have you been afforded that opportunity?
No.
Okay. So you've met a lot of influential senators, business people, religious leaders. I know you've had a chance to meet like Franklin Graham.
And Anne Graham.
Okay. Your life has changed from what you're describing so much in the last, 15 months now? Mm-hmm.
Well, I went to the media December of 2012, so it's been about 13 months since I really put myself out there. So,
all that experience, all those conversations, all those interactions, today, the day that we're sitting here talking, we're now, at this point, 13 months into it.
Into media, yeah.
Into the media presence, not 13 months into his sentence.
No, it's been a year and a half.
Okay, a year and a half. And his sentencing was the 27th of last year.
Yeah, the sentencing was, but before January, he was already serving.
Yeah.
So it's been a year and a half since his imprisonment, but I went to media about 13 months ago.
In that time, you've learned a lot, I would imagine. And like, here we are now 13 months later into your experience. I know that there's the BeHeardProject.org.
Yes.
In fact, BeHeardProject.org/Save Saeed, SAEED. More than that, though, what else can we do? Like from your standpoint, being so close to this, what is the missing link? What is that thing that's not happening?
You know, I think our government doesn't want to say a thing. Our government has to be pushed to be vocal about this. I think it has to be a grassroots movement. It has to be people continually saying this is an important issue. I know it's going to be just from different, I know it's going to be a huge Christian persecution and Saeed being part of that. It's going to be a huge presidential issue for the future. And when more and more people say, I've been able to meet with these government officials, not from only our government, but also different governments, because this is becoming, people are saying, we care about this. You know, those higher up who don't care about certain issues, they care when the masses care. And this has become such a huge movement. I just, last month I asked for a day of prayer, and 10,000 pastors in Brazil gathered and prayed. Not 10,000 people, 10,000 pastors in Brazil gathered and prayed for Saeed, and they sent me the video. I get letters from all over the world. I just got a whole bunch of letters from Thailand. But so this has become such a big issue. The masses really, I would say, if this was a year and a half ago, I would say, what can a stay-at-home mom, a wife, someone who doesn't like really doing much.
Doesn't like the public eye.
Doesn't like the public eye from Boise, Idaho, not from New York, not from LA. What can I do? And a lot of people think that. I say, oh, I'm not going to make that call to the senator or to our governor or to our mayor, whatever. What can one voice? What difference can one voice make? And I have to say, my life is a testimony of when they took my husband, I decided to be vocal, and one voice makes a huge difference. And every call you make, every petition you sign, everything you do as one person makes a huge difference. I did not realize how big that is. And these senators are meeting with me, these big government officials or even businessmen like Donald Trump, and are meeting with me because this is people, every single voice is adding, and it's becoming a big voice. And so I would just say, don't think your voice doesn't count. Your voice counts. So yeah, I would say BeHeardProject.com. It has petitions and things you can sign, but also just picking up the phone. I'd never picked up the phone to call anyone, any of our government officials before this happened, and I decided I'm just going to do it. So picking up the phone and calling your senator and saying, "This is I live here. I care about this issue." Calling senators, congressmen, mayors, governor, and saying, this is important, do something about it. They will do it. Each voice counts, each phone call counts. I've done prayer vigils. We did a prayer vigil in Boise. Never done a prayer vigil in my life. But I decided to be a voice. And before I would say, I can't make a difference. I'm one person. And I would say one person from Boise, Idaho, from Caldwell, from Nampa, from wherever, CUNA, you can make a difference. One person can make a difference. And before I believed in that lie that I didn't. And so I would say, yes, go and sign the petition and BeHeardProject.com and do what you can, but also just pick up the phone and call your government officials. My trip to Geneva is going to be huge. It's going to bring more awareness about Saeed and the persecuted Christians.
Tell me about that. Tell me why you're going there, what you're going there for.
It's once a year before the the UN Human Rights Council meets. There's the day before there's the Geneva Committee for Human Rights and Democracy.
Okay.
And so they choose very well-known people who've won the Nobel Peace and very well-known human rights advocates to speak. And it's just a miracle that they've chosen me as one of their speakers. And
what an opportunity.
As many people know, that's not a Christian-friendly environment. To be able to speak about Christ and to speak about my husband and Christian persecution is a huge platform. So these doors are opening for the gospel and for Christian persecution to be able to be a voice because people are calling, because that one person that doesn't think their voice counts is making a call. I couldn't have done it without the voices of the masses behind me, of those calls, of those letters.
I think about everything you've gone through, and you've kind of spoke to this in a way, but I would think there would be days I would just want to give up. That I would just want to throw in the towel and say, I give up. How do you press on through that? How do you balance?
I've had a few of those. I had it when I heard they moved him to the new prison, because I felt like I was running so fast and doing everything. And our president called the Iranian president in September of 2013. And I felt like, okay, he's going to be released. And then hearing about a month and a half after the call that I was waiting for a phone call saying he's released, I got a call that he's been put in a worse prison with murderers and rapists, and he's being threatened. He has lice, and he's doing horribly. That was a time where I was like, I'm done. What else could I have done? It's just getting worse. And also just this year, just realizing it's 2014, I had a whole year of running around, doing everything, speaking before the Congress twice. One of them being the Foreign Affairs Committee, which is huge. It determines our relationship with Iran. Speaking in front of the UN, tracking down the Iranian president in New York, just doing things, everything I could, from travels to just anything that I could think of. And so realizing it's 2014, what now? I've dealt with a lot of hopelessness and just wanting to give up. And the only thing that has been able to get me up, two things, has been Christ. Going to Christ and getting hope from him, realizing, okay, I tried, I knocked at all the doors, but God is in control. He knows when Saeed's supposed to come out, and no government, even our government's lack of movement, still God is in control. And then second is people just messaging me, calling me, writing letters saying, we haven't forgotten, just because a year and a half has passed. Because one of your fears, I guess I have to admit, is this is old news. He's being forgotten, and then he's just going to be in the back, and no one's going to care anymore. This is old news, and he's just going to be in this cell, and he might not survive the 8 years. So when people just continually tell me we haven't forgotten him, we're still writing to our government, we're still speaking out, we're praying, our family prays every day. It really means a lot. That has given me a lot of strength to continue.
That's amazing. And one of the things that you've said before, when we've talked even, you've talked about how I don't want to misrepresent, so correct me, but you've talked about how you believe God has Saeed in that prison for a reason.
Oh, yeah.
Is that correct? What do you feel that reason is?
Initially it was like, why and why now? And as I learned more and more, I got some phone calls from wives who said they visited their husband. He was different. And they would ask, why are you different? You're just calmer and do you have joy? And they would say, oh, talk to Saeed's wife. She knows. She would know why I have so much peace and joy now. And I got to share with the wives about Christ. I start seeing the bigger picture. Like Saeed's been sent there on a mission. Saeed wanted to reach the hardest. He wanted to reach where no one was able to reach. And he's been sent on a mission to reach those people. And every testimony I've heard coming out of that prison of people coming to know Christ has made it so much easier for me to see, okay, this is a bigger picture. Because I see my bigger picture. I see, okay, outside of the prison, I'm speaking in front of the UN, I'm speaking before the Congress. And more than speaking about my husband, I'm sharing the gospel, which is what that's why Saeed's in there for. He's passionate about Jesus. And so every opportunity I get, I share about the gospel. But to know that him in prison is making such a difference, he's leading people to Christ, has been amazing. And given me more of a, calm me down more. Okay, Lord, you have him there for a purpose, for some people that need to hear about you.
So let me ask you a hard question, because I'm listening to what you're sharing, and I'm thinking, okay, this is interesting. So what would you say to someone, and this isn't me, I love what you're doing, but what would you say to someone who says, okay, Naghmeh, you believe he's there for a purpose, so why are you trying to get him out? You know, if he's there to share the gospel, the hardest of the hardest, that's what he wanted to do, why are you fighting so hard to get him out?
I don't know. What I've learned of the character of God is he wants you to be active, but at the same time, you can say, well, God's going to save whoever he needs to save in the world, and why go out on a mission? And I've seen that. When I went to Iran, I saw a lot of people that were saved, not because of a missionary or a Bible, but because their child was dying. They said, God help me for the first time. And they saw Jesus come and heal their child and said, I'm God, and I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And so we could take that as Christians, why do anything? What I've known of the character of God, he's a God of justice. He's a God that wants us to share his message of love and salvation. And he's a God that wants us to stand up for justice. Now, the balance is standing up and doing all you can, but not falling into despair, not thinking those are your gods. What I felt like the Lord was speaking into my life was, you need to step out and do all you can, not only because of Saeed, but mainly because I'm going to open doors before you for the gospel. If I'd sat back and said, okay, God's going to do it, why even try so hard? And he's there for a purpose, and God will get him out at the right time. I wouldn't have been, after I spoke at the UN in Geneva last year in front of 196 nations, I had so many Muslim countries come up to me and say, I'd never heard that before. And I got to share the gospel. And I would have never had that chance if I would have said, okay, I'm just going to sit back. And so I do what I've learned of the character of God. You step out. God is not just, we see Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We see a lot of people who are Christians who've made a change for women, for blacks, for different, issues, for children. And it has come from the Bible. And so the God I know is a God of justice who wants us to speak out, who wants us to take action, who doesn't want us to sit back. But it's doing all you can, but also stepping back and saying, I'm not going to fall into despair. You're still in control. And so it's just the balance of doing all you can because there's a purpose. God has a purpose in you taking a step for justice, but also not feeling, which I've had to deal with, feeling into despair because he's not out. It's like, so the balance is, okay, I'm doing all that I can, but my faith is in God. He will get him out when he's done with his mission. I really had to also say, it's been hard. Initially, I didn't want to say it, but I've had to say, if he doesn't make it out alive, you're still a good God. It's not going to affect my faith.
That's the hard part, isn't it?
That was the hard part because I didn't want to give that to God. I wanted to say, you save him. And I had to, but I was reminded of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego where they said, our God will deliver us. But if he doesn't, he's still God. It doesn't change who he is. And I didn't want to say that to God. I was afraid I would say it. And
you don't want to give him permission.
No, I didn't want to give him, but I had to. Initially, I had to be like, okay, Lord, if he gives his life, then I'll still be okay. and you're still God, and you're still a good God. That doesn't change who you are. And it was a struggle for me initially, but going back to what you said, as Christians, we're called to stand up for justice.
Yeah.
We're called to be a voice. We can't be silent. But we can't be frustrated when nothing's happening. Our part is just to do what we're called to do, just to speak. Then we have to allow God to do his part, not fall into despair or get angry or get bitter or, just letting go, doing your part and letting go and letting God do his part has been what I've learned.
It's interesting to me that we have this country with so many Christians and we say so little. We
have a powerful voice.
Yeah.
We forget as Christians, we say a lot of people that have a lesser voice, that are less in number at least, they have a louder voice than we do. As Christians, we're not being vocal about really important issues, killing unborn children or other issues, Christian persecution.
Right.
And just different things that we have a voice. We forget. That was the lie I believed in when Saeed was, before Saeed was taken. I didn't do much because I thought, what difference can someone from Boise, Idaho make? But we have a powerful voice in what we vote for and our actions, even a call to our government officials. This is an issue I care about. But we've become lazy Christians in a way, complacent, just not being hot to do anything. And, and so that's what God is calling us to do. Get up and be a voice for me. You are my voice, and we need to do that.
Well, and the voice, as you're talking, the voice that we have to speak out on behalf of human rights and religious freedom for Christians and others. Because I think sometimes in this context, it's Christian persecution. But as we talk about even other things, it's like
because
we have this opportunity.
God loves the people. God loves all people. And when people that are not Christians, but you're saying, you don't deserve to be treated like that or killed or raped because you're Hindu or you're Muslim or you're Jew or whatever, I will protect you because that's my God. I will stand up for you even though you're not a Christian. It makes a difference. I've seen people come to know the Lord because of that. Because why would you defend me? I'm not even your religion. And that's the radical love that Jesus wants from us, is a radical form of love to the dying world that doesn't understand. They need to see love in action. And this is protecting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't say, okay, I'm going to bring equality to black Christians.
Right.
No, for all.
Right.
Doesn't matter if you're Muslim, you're Jew, you're, atheist, you're Hindu. I'm going to stand up for justice for all and equality for all. And that, as Christians, we are the voice, You look at history, women's rights and minority rights. It has all stemmed from Christianity. We forget that. We think it's the non-Christian liberals whose job is that. No, that's our job, because we know the true living God who cares about justice, who cares about human rights issues. And we should be the ones at the forefront of bringing, standing up for these issues.
I want to applaud your efforts because I think what you and Saeed are doing together, even though you're not physically together right now, is that you as a couple are bringing to the forefront an issue that Americans in particular have had the luxury of ignoring, truthfully. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I mean, because when you don't see it in your own street, you don't see it in your own neighborhood.
And that's why I think God has brought it to our attention, to this country's attention, because it was abroad. It was something we didn't deal with, and it was something we just pushed back. But it's here.
Very real.
It's real. It's in Boise.
Yeah.
Someone from Boise. So it's even more real, should be even more real from people in this area. But yeah, I think there's a purpose God has allowed this to be, and as Christians who've never had to deal with that, for American Christians to see it in front of their face.
And understand it's real.
And understand it's real. And I think it's God's way of saying, wake up, stand up. And we've forgotten to do that. It's not an accident that someone from Boise becomes world face to persecution, and it's God has chosen this for this time for a purpose. And I do believe, and I've shared at many churches and events, God is telling the American Christians, wake up.
That's an awesome responsibility you carry.
It's been amazing. I've shared at so many churches and events, and I shared at events where there's been 10 or more different churches that have come from different beliefs and ideas, and to see the body of Christ come together regardless of where you stand as a denomination has been amazing. And to see, I've seen the body of Christ get awaken. I've seen awakenings. I've seen things happen in people's lives and people's marriage, and that has been amazing. But I do believe God has allowed this at this time for revival, for awakening in the body of Christ, and saying, wake up. That's his message to us here, not in Boise, not only in Boise, but in the U.S. Wake up, because we could easily fall asleep before the bridegroom comes back, which I believe is close.
We're napping.
Yeah.
I mean, we're napping, and
But you know what? We need to wake up, because I do believe that the end is close. Jesus coming back is very close.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah. But we have to be awake. We can't be sleeping when he comes back. So.
Well, and speaking of being awake, so let's just go back through that. The BeHeardProject.org/Save Saeed. That's a good place to start.
Signing petitions.
Signing petitions, a great place to start. But sending letters,
phone calls,
to
emails.
officials,
You know, if you don't want to write an actual letter, I'm not good at that. But you know, you search on Google your senators and congressmen and governor and mayor, and there's an email address. You write a message, you copy and paste the same message to all of them, and 5 minutes.
Is there a resource where a letter has been drafted that folks could use if they don't feel like they're good at writing letters, but they could?
I think actually BeHeardProject.com has a few letters that have been drafted for our government to Iranian president and different things, but it could be a simple. It's just it could be a simple phone call or one line. What is being done with this American pastor, Saeed Abedini? I care about this issue. It could be a simple line, because our government already knows. You don't have to give a history. You could just have to be a simple line.
Just need to say you care and want it to be addressed.
Yeah, a call or a quick email saying, I care about this issue. What is our government? What are you doing for this? It could be just one line.
Okay. Well, you know, it's time for home. It's time for the hometown to get involved, I think. And so, and not that they haven't been.
Because this is going to be where the party's going to be at when
better
Saeed
be.
comes
It
home.
better be.